Welcome to episode 82 of the 3M Fear podcast. Deborah wanted to test if something actually was happening in the house or was she wondering all these things. So she decided to do a test. She stood in the kitchen and asked for the objects to move, but nothing happened. She waited for some time, but the thing still didn't move. She finally gave up and walked into the dining room. And that's when she saw that the table had shifted. Still curious, she pointed to a framed photograph on the fireplace mantel and asked for it to move. Again, nothing happened while she watched. By now, she was somehow sure that maybe if she was watching, the things wouldn't move. So for that, Deborah and Bill Jr. left the room and waited in the kitchen. After 5 minutes, they returned and the picture had moved. Both of them were terrified. Bill Jr. had a serious heart condition and was almost about to have a panic attack. Worried for his health, they quickly left the house and told Bill's parents what had happened. Lee was the most frightened out of all. Hello and welcome to the 3am Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started. In the 1980s, the Moffat family lived in Southern California. Life was simple until strange and terrifying events turned their world upside down. Deborah Moffat had met her husband, Bill Jr., through exchanging letters and TV show tapes. After they fell in love, Deborah moved to California and married Bill. They lived with Bill's parents, who were Bill Sr. and Lena, also called as Lee, in a quiet house on Archibald Avenue. Next door, Bill's grandmother, Dominica, lived in her own home. But she was getting sicker and sicker. A caretaker named Juanita from Guatemala was hired to help Dominica daily. It was said that Juanita practiced a spiritual ritual called Santeria. She performed the ceremony in the house, hoping to keep Dominica healthy so that she could keep her job in the US. Now, Santeria is a religion that began in Cuba in the late 19th century. I don't want to go too deep into this, so I'll just give you a brief idea. It is said that it does not have any strict set of rules, so its rituals and practices can vary. Some rituals could include music, drumming, and even animal sacrifices. These sacrifices are meant for good purposes, like for example, if you're praying for someone's good health, then yes, these are some of the sacrifices that can be done. Now, it may look scary to the outside world, but the people who are doing it are mostly doing it for good. And Juanita's ritual for Dominica was likely done with good intentions. But the day after Dominica's death, Juanita called the family in a panic, claiming that someone was chasing her in the house. Bill Jr. and his father rushed over, and as they arrived, they saw a glowing white orb chasing Juanita. As they tried to help her, it disappeared into the sky. Terrified, Juanita warned the family that Dominica's house was now full of evil. She left the home and Lee rarely went back inside. Lee was so scared about what Juanita just said that she almost never went back inside. When the family cleaned out the house, they found evidence that Juanita had conducted rituals inside the house. There were candles, small knives, broken rosaries, and even remains of sacrificed animals hidden in the corners. These events marked the beginning of a haunting that would torment the family for years to come. Now, Lee was a devout Catholic. She believed that whatever Juanita had done was connected to evil, and that whatever she had done was somehow also connected to her mother's death. Now, although it is said that Juanita's ritual for Dominica was done because she wanted Dominica to feel better and get well soon, but maybe it did the opposite. When the Moffat family found candles, rosaries, knives, and animal remains in the house, they thought that something dark and dangerous was coming. To Lee, it looked like witchcraft or an attempt to summon the evil. The family believed that whatever strange events would happen in the house in the future were because of Juanita's ritual. This ritual is believed to have accidentally opened the door for something evil to enter. To be honest, even now, there is no way to know for sure where the hauntings began. Was it already there? Or is it connected to Juanita's ritual? Or is it something that automatically came in and it had nothing to do with the house or Juanita? Nobody would ever know. For a few years after the strange events with Juanita, things seemed to calm down for the Moffat family. But by 1987, strange things started happening in the house. The first was that Bill Jr. had inherited the house next door. Bill and Deborah didn't live in this house. Instead, they decided to rent it out to a man named Danny. Now, there was one condition for the rental house. One room in the house would remain locked to store Bill's sports collectibles like baseball cards, jerseys, and bobbleheads. Occasionally, the Moffats would come, check out the room, make sure that everything was safe, and leave. Now, Danny was fine with it. One day, the Moffats were out on their usual check, but when they opened the locked room, they found Bill's bobbleheads on the floor, arranged in a triangle with an S-shaped tail. Bill thought that Danny might be playing a prank, but Danny swore. He said he never entered the locked room. At first, they didn't believe him, but even more strange things started happening. Now the thing was, there was only one key to enter the room, and that key was with Bill. So there was in no way that Danny entered the room, messed everything up, and then got out and locked the room as it is. From here, things might get a little confusing because of the name Bill. The father is Bill Sr. and the son is Bill Jr. Now in Bill Sr. and Lee's house, where Deborah and Bill Jr. lived, Lee had a small altar in her bedroom. It held religious statues and pictures of saints, where she and her husband prayed every night. One morning, as Lee woke up, she was shocked to find clothes draped in the hands of a statue of Jesus. But as time passed, more and more odd things would happen. More items would appear on the altar, like a fancy watch or a wallet. Now, to their surprise, these items belonged to Danny, the tenant next door. The family returned the items to him, but they couldn't explain how they got them. Danny didn't last long in the house because strange things would start happening to him too. The Moffat family was happy and decided that they would clean up the house and rent it to someone else. Because with all these things happening, they somehow felt that maybe Danny was connected to it. Now, one good thing about Danny was that he had kept the house so clean that they didn't expect to do much work in the house. When they entered the house, Deborah noticed strange crayon markings on the light switches in the living room, odd shapes and symbols. She thought that Danny might have some unusual habits that they didn't know about and that these crayon markings were made by him. Then, on a high shelf, Deborah saw a row of small dog statues. She looked around to see if anything else was strange, but when she looked back, all the dog statues had their faces turned to the wall. Shocked, she called Bill Jr., but when he arrived, the statues went back to normal. Nobody saw the statues move, but when they looked back, the statues had moved. How? Now, Bill Jr. did not notice this, so when he came, all the statues were looking normal. He dismissed her claims, but Deborah was not sure of what she saw. The next day, they returned to the house to continue cleaning. This time, they found one of the bedroom lamps lying on the living room floor. All the doors and windows were still locked. So, how did all of these things move? Bill Jr., who had doubted Deborah before, now admitted that something strange was happening in the house. But even if someone broke into the house, why would they just move a few things and leave? Why not rob the house? Now, Deborah wanted to test if something actually was happening in the house or was she wondering all these things. So she decided to do a test. She stood in the kitchen and asked for the objects to move, but nothing happened. She waited for some time, but the things still didn't move. She finally gave up and walked into the dining room. And that's when she saw that the table had shifted. Still curious, she pointed to a framed photograph on the fireplace mantel and asked for it to move. Again, nothing happened while she watched. By now, she was somehow sure that maybe if she was watching, the things wouldn't move. So for that, Deborah and Bill Jr. left the room and waited in the kitchen. After 5 minutes, they returned and the picture had moved. Both of them were terrified. Bill Jr. had a serious heart condition and was almost about to have a panic attack. Worried for his health, they quickly left the house and told Bill's parents what had happened. Lee was the most frightened out of all. She was the most religious, and of course, it was going to be normal that she was afraid. They decided that they would rent the house but not get in. And finally, they ended up renting the house to a couple named Tom and Michelle. Being good people, they warned the couple that something was wrong in the house. But Tom and Michelle didn't believe this. They thought that they were getting a house at a very good deal, so why not? And they didn't take any of these hauntings seriously. For a while, everything seemed fine. But Deborah soon noticed that Michelle was outside with her face swollen and bruised. When asked, Michelle would tell her that her husband had become so violent since moving into the house. Deborah urged her to go and get help, but Michelle refused. A week later, Michelle disappeared. Tom told the Moffats that she had left and would never come back. Shortly after that, Tom would leave the house, but when he left the house, everything was clean except the rug in their house was missing. Days later, a strange man visited asking for Tom. Deborah explained the situation that Michelle had left Tom, and then Tom, out of sadness, had mostly left the house. The man mentioned that Michelle's body had been found in a landfill, wrapped up in the Moffat's missing rug. So did this haunting cause Tom to kill his wife? Now the thing is, Bill Jr. loved to read the newspaper, but he had not read any news about a body being found or about any person named Michelle. It seemed as if the man might be lying, but both of them wanted to know why. Deborah wanted to call the police, but Lee said no, and the family did not report anything. Soon after all these things happened, the Moffats decided to sell all the three houses on Archibald Avenue and move to a new part of the town. Now remember, the Moffats owned three properties: one where Bill Jr. and Deborah lived, one where Bill Sr. and Lee lived, and finally, the last one which was given on rent. As they began to leave, strange things began happening again. Objects moved, disappeared, or were even found in odd places. On their final day at the house, Deborah and Lee returned to collect the last of their items. But when packing in Lee's old bedroom, they heard a loud explosion from the kitchen. They rushed over and found all the cupboards ripping off the walls. It was a terrifying end to their time on Archibald Avenue. After the kitchen cupboards were ripped from the walls in the old house, Deborah and Lee heard shattering glasses in the bedroom. They found the windows broken from the inside. By 1988, the Moffats had moved into their new house. For 2 peaceful weeks, nothing strange happened. They hoped that whatever was troubling them was over. But then, one fine day, Bill Sr. found a family photo turned backward on the mantel. He had not done it, and neither had anyone else. At first, Lee thought that maybe it was her, maybe she did it by accident. But they would soon realize that they were not alone in this new house. This time, whatever was happening was a lot worse. In the middle of the night, they heard screams and voices whispering their names. Their home alarm would automatically go off, and personal belongings were flipped backward. They thought that someone in the family might be playing tricks, until Lee discovered a message written in soap on the bathroom mirror. It said, "Talk to me." No one admitted to writing it. Deborah tried to wipe it away, but moments later, another message appeared. No escape. Whatever this entity was, it started writing more and more messages. It started warning the family of danger, like bad wire in the attic, fire and death, and stay away. Some messages even seemed personal. Like, for example, one of the messages had the name Nini, which was Lee's childhood nickname. Now, no one other than Lee knew about this nickname. So, how did this entity know? One day, Bill Sr. had enough. He yelled out at the top of his lungs, demanding to know who this entity was. And finally, they had a name: Prince. Everyone now believed that they were dealing with something truly paranormal. Lee, who was deeply religious, contacted the local church for blessing. When the priest came, he hesitated at first. He was so scared that he did not even step properly into the house. He just sprinkled some holy water, said a short prayer, and ran out. After this, the haunting became worse. The entity wrote hateful messages on the mirror daily, like, "I hate Lee," and "Lee, die." Then the attacks would become physical. Carpets were torn apart, and strange symbols were scratched into the walls, including a triangle with an S-shaped tail. Pentagrams and inverted crosses would appear all through the house. The altar in Lee's bedroom was constantly destroyed. Her religious items were thrown everywhere. Her statue of Jesus was found damaged, with his head and arm broken. Pictures of saints were thrown onto the floor. The Moffat family was so scared that they knew that whatever was going to come was going to be worse. After Lee found her belongings vandalized, she saw this as an insult to her faith. She didn't want to leave her bedroom upstairs, but the entity did not want her to stay there, and so it destroyed her mattress. She and her husband were forced to live downstairs in Deborah and Bill Jr.'s room, all four of them in one bedroom. It is said that the air on the top floor was so bad that no one could go upstairs, and they were all forced to live downstairs. Now, despite the move, despite the family going far away from their old house, the entity still targeted Lee. And no one knew why this entity was behind Lee. It stole her belongings like purses, jewelry, and clothing. It mocked her faith by leaving messages on the mirror like God's fairy tale. Lee often tried to read the Bible in order to protect herself from the entity, but the entity gave her even more insults. Now, the entity, of course, was listening to whatever they were talking. So, in order to protect herself and in order to stop the entity from understanding what they were speaking, Lee even tried to speak to Bill Jr. in a rare Italian dialect that no one else could understand. But soon, the entity began writing in the same language. No one could keep a secret from this entity. Deborah and Bill Jr. searched for paranormal experts. They invited several to the house, but no one could help. A team of psychics finally said that the presence was an ancient, powerful entity, which the family now called the entity. As time passed, the attacks got worse. The entity began throwing objects at Lee, like shoes, food, and silverware. But then it turned violent. It started throwing knives. One morning, as Lee sat at the dining table, a knife pierced through the chair cushion beneath her. She was almost about to be stabbed. Soon, knives started appearing at her bed, chairs, and even on the stairs, with the blades pointing upward. 6 knives were once found in her bed. Lee was terrified. She was scared to move in her house. Deborah stayed awake most nights, afraid that something would happen to her mother-in-law. Bill Jr. and Deborah continued to search for help, but nothing worked. Through 1988, the entity's torture became even worse. The family would have weird smells of feces and rot. Strange noises would come through the walls, and footsteps could be heard on the abandoned second floor. No one had been to the second floor in a really long time, so it was very scary when they started hearing footsteps. Knocking sounds came from closets, pantries, and even inside the walls. One month, as the family looked out from their house, they saw that there was a large number of birds outside their home. The entity seemed to find new ways to constantly torture them. Every day in that house became even more scary. The Moffat family's situation became worse. Black birds started dive bombing into the bedroom windows. That is, they would come flying through the roof and then smash their bodies into the windows, leaving behind bloody streaks as they died on impact. Their home also became infested with rats. But these were not those normal rats that would run and hide when you find them. Instead, these rats started boldly staring at pantry shelves. And no matter how hard Deborah tried, they would not leave. Deborah was so desperate that she went to the bathroom mirror and begged the entity to stop the rats. By the next day, the rats were gone, but the torture continued. The entity started bringing back items from places that the family had visited, like, for example, souvenirs from their trip to Lake Tahoe, or maybe waitress name tags from restaurant. Anywhere the family went, they were sure that the entity was going to steal something from that place and then make that thing appear in their house. If they tried to stay in hotel rooms, then it would mark the walls of the rooms with its signature triangle and curved symbols. The Moffat family realized that no matter where they went, they could not escape this entity. The family's mental health began to decline. Lee lived in constant fear, her eyes always checking the room, waiting to see when the entity was going to attack her. She rarely moved from the kitchen table or couch because she was afraid that if she did, then the entity would attack her. No one knew when or where the next knife attack would come from. The family often huddled together, sat together, hugged each other, and waited for the entity to attack. Bill Jr.'s heart condition worsened from the stress. He avoided leaving the master bedroom alone. Deborah was the strongest of all. She tried to help her family as much as she could. But even then, there was nothing that she could do. She saw her family fall apart in front of her, but she couldn't do anything. Her father-in-law refused to help. Her husband was getting sicker, and her mother-in-law lived in constant fear that she was going to be attacked. Her father-in-law, Bill Sr.'s only worry was that the entity was destroying his house, his property. It seemed as if he didn't care about his family, but more about the house. In their desperation, Deborah and Bill Jr. asked for more help. Late in 1988, they met a Native American shaman named Red Wing at a psychic fair. Now, Red Wing consulted an elder who gave her permission to help the Moffats. Before they left, the elder told Deborah, "You are not who you think you are." A few days later, Red Wing and another shaman named Fire Panther would visit the Moffats' house. Together, they would walk into the second floor. The air felt thick and hard to breathe. They performed a ritual, burning sage and waving the smoke as they walked around. But no matter how much they tried, the smoke was pushed back as if someone was rejecting it. Realizing they had to confront the entity directly, Deborah followed the shamans into the attic. They burned more sage and chanted, trying to provoke the entity. Suddenly, the insulation on the attic walls began to shift, and now they could see a face. But this face was a little different. The place where the ear should have been now had a spiraling horn. For several seconds, the face held its shape, and then it disappeared. The group was now afraid. Red Wing admitted that this entity was far stronger than what they had thought. They would not be able to help get rid of the entity. Fire Panther said that even though they could not help get rid of the entity, maybe they could help move this entity into their family dog. It would take them some time, but they would finally move the entity into the family dog. Or at least, that's what they said. Jeff, the family dog, became sick and soon after died. Now it is unknown whether the dog died because it was sick or because of the entity. But the dog died. But even after the dog died, things did not stop. At the end of 1988, the Moffats invited a paranormal researcher named Gary Kent to stay at their house and observe all the strange activity. From the moment he arrived, Gary challenged the entity, shouting in the bathroom, "Show me what you can do." Within an hour, a book fell from the second floor balcony and struck Gary on the head. The entity now began targeting Gary instead of Lee. It tore his clothes, destroyed his belongings, and wrote humiliating messages about him on the bathroom mirror. The messages even mocked Gary's personal life. One night, knives appeared in the guest room where Gary was staying, and the room was thrown into chaos. During breakfast one morning, Deborah heard a snipping noise. She turned and saw Gary's hair fall on the table. Gary was so scared that he ran outside the house, horrified as the entity continued to cut his hair. Not long after that, Gary left the house and said he would not come back again. Now, even though Gary could not help the Moffats, Lee for some time had some peace of mind because the entity was busy troubling Gary instead of her. Fortunately, after everything that happened, Deborah finally reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, the renowned paranormal investigators. The Warrens agreed to come to her house and check out the spirit. When the Warrens came, Lorraine walked around the house to gather whatever psychic energy she could. After walking around the house, she said that this entity was an ancient and powerful demon that had invaded their house. The next evening, the Warrens performed a ritual called the Rite of Provocation to force the entity to get out of the house. The family and the Warrens sat in a U shape in the living room as Ed started to recite the opening prayers. The room grew dark. Suddenly, Bill Sr. slumped forward. His body started twisting. He got up from the chair and started growling like an animal and dragged one leg behind him as he moved towards Ed. Ed held up a small vial containing a shard of wood, claiming that this was a piece of the Holy Cross. He used it for his protection and stood there as Bill Sr. started to move in unnatural positions. He was now in the entity's hands. Bill Sr. started to snarl like an animal, baring his teeth. His voice changed and he threatened Ed, saying that he would bite his hand off, chew it up, and spit it back. Bill's body moved. The Warrens believed that for a small period of time, the demon was inside Bill Sr. But soon after, Bill Sr. would go back to normal. A day after all of this happened, there was a huge surge of water flooding from the second floor. But there were no broken pipes, no leaks, nothing. It was just a huge amount of water. Lorraine believed that the demon had attached itself to Lee, and that's why no matter how many houses they moved, this demon was not going to leave them. Wherever Lee went, the demon would go with her. The Warrens said that the only way they could get rid of this demon was with the help of a church. But unfortunately, there were no church connections in California. So the Warrens told the Moffats that they could go to an Episcopal priest. But Bill Sr. said no. He was a hardcore Catholic, and he said that the priest had to be Catholic. When the priest came, he did not allow the priest to go inside. Now the Warrens had nothing that they could do. Bill Sr. would not allow the priest to go inside, and without the priest, they could not get rid of the demon. And so, the Warrens also said that they could not help the family, and they left. Once the Warrens left, the entity went back to torturing Lee. One day, Lee entered the pantry alone. Deborah and Bill Jr. heard pounding on the pantry door. When they forced it open, they found Lee lying on the floor, red marks around her neck, as if someone had tried to strangle her. Deborah, who was now desperate to protect her family, confronted the entity and demanded that it leave them alone. Soon after this, a writing came on the bathroom wall. "I will not touch her child. I will not touch her husband. Lee belongs to me." This message made it clear that the entity wanted Lee and no one else. After much asking, the entity started writing the story on the wall to why it wanted Lee. It said that in a past life, Lee was a nun in the 1600s in France. The story described a group of monks who were trying to perform a blood ritual which involved a nun that they had captured. Now this nun was Lee, but one of the monks betrayed the group and allowed the nun to escape. The entity said that Lee was that nun who escaped and that finally it had found Lee. The entity said that the blood ritual had to happen. Some of the paranormal theorists believe that demons can attach themselves to bloodlines passed down through generations, something like a curse. So the nun could have been someone from Lee's bloodline. Now it had been months. The entity had told the family that they had to call him the prince. But Deborah decided that they would not call him the prince, but rather Mr. Entity, believing that this would be a disrespect and this would make the entity angry and would leave them. But the entity started writing more and more messages saying that if Deborah did not call him prince, then he would not leave them. Deborah would find a very scary message on the mirror. Lee will die in 10 days. Now Deborah was not sure whether this message was real or not, but on the final day of the countdown, Lee became very sick. She was struggling to breathe. The family rushed her to the hospital where the doctors diagnosed her with pneumonia and heart failure. But fortunately, Lee would get her treatment and survive. Now during her time in the hospital, the entity did not trouble her but troubled the family by moving small things here and there, which right now was quite normal to this family. But one day, Lee had a very strange experience. While she was in the hospital, she saw a black stain on the ceiling that started to move across the room and towards her. The stain formed into a shadowy figure which grew into a dark shape that looked like an old woman. As Lee looked closer, she realized that this looked exactly like her mother, Dominica. Lee believed that this was her mother's spirit who was trying to protect her from the entity, and that if her mother didn't help her, she would have died. Now, even after Lee came back home, her health was not that great. She had to carry an oxygen tank and wear tubes in her nose to help her breathe. One night, Deborah heard Lee gasping for air, only to find that the oxygen tubes had been cut. The family quickly blamed the entity for it. Over the next few months, the family took turns watching over Lee, afraid that the entity might attack her. One evening, Deborah asked Bill Sr. to watch over Lee, but when she went to talk to Bill Jr., suddenly Lee ran into the room gasping for air and collapsed on the floor. She felt like she was having a heart attack. When Deborah went back to the living room, she found that Bill Sr. had gone to the garage. Over a period of time, just like this, many strange things would happen, and the family would soon start to believe that there was something wrong with Bill Sr. He was asked to look after Lee, but he didn't. And one night, Bill Sr. would wake up screaming. Something cold and metal had brushed against his leg. When they turned on the lights, they saw a large dagger on the floor. But no one knew where this dagger came from. To be honest, all those knives, no one knew where those knives came from also. Those knives didn't belong to the family. Feeling desperate, Deborah went to the bathroom to try and talk to the entity. When she opened the door, she saw a new message on the mirror telling her to perform the blood ritual and kill Lee. The instructions included stabbing Lee in the heart with a spearhead, which was a strange dagger that appeared in the house. Now Deborah was not ready to kill her mother-in-law. But suddenly, there was a loud explosion that shook the whole house. Everyone was okay. But Bill Sr. said that it sounded like a bomb went off upstairs. When they checked the second floor, they found that all the windows had been blown out from the inside and the drapes had been ripped apart. It was clear that the entity was trying to cause harm. After the explosion, Deborah decided that she was not going to wait any longer. She took the spearhead to the History Museum in Los Angeles, and when two experts looked at it, they said that it looked like a ritual tool from Congo, but only that this tool looked brand new. When they asked the Moffats where they got this tool, the Moffats didn't know what to tell them, and so they just took the tool and went back home. In the summer of 1989, the family found Dr. Evelyn, a parapsychologist and magic practitioner from Chicago. She had recently moved to California, and the Moffats asked her if she could help with the hauntings. She visited the house and instructed the family to draw symbols and messages on the bathroom mirror. And every time they did, the entity would cross them out and began writing new threatening messages. Evelyn was confused at first, but later it was revealed that she had been a co-founder of a satanic group called the Church of Nephilim in Chicago. The group believed in the real existence of Satan, and after it split up, Evelyn started her own satanic church. The family thought that maybe the entity knew this and all about Evelyn's past, and because of that, it was angry. Over the next month, Evelyn and the entity seemed to be kind of in an anger mode. Evelyn asked the family to clear the upstairs bedroom, and when she arrived, she used a candlelight to examine the family's energy. Afterward, she would tell Deborah that someone in the family had given the entity permission to stay. Someone in that family had betrayed the family. It would take them some time, but they would finally realize that it was Bill Sr. Now, after spending some time in the house, Evelyn would say that the entity was a demon and that it was one of the 7 princes of hell. These 7 princes of hell were the most powerful demons, each representing one of the 7 deadly sins: lust, gluttony, pride, sloth, envy, greed, and wrath. And the leader of these 7 princes was Lucifer. Now, if whatever Evelyn had said was true, then the family was in danger, real danger. Evelyn would go on to say that Bill Sr. is the one who brought this demon into the family, and that the only way to help the family is to make this demon happy. Because if this demon was really one of the 7 princes of hell, then there was no way that the family could get rid of him. They had to make this prince happy, and the only way to do that was to make sure that whatever the prince asked, give the prince whatever he asks. For this, she said that clear up the upstairs bedroom so that they could make life easier for everyone. But Lee refused to believe. She refused to believe that her husband tried to get an entity into the house. By late 1990, Deborah noticed that Bill Sr. had changed a lot. He became very withdrawn, quiet, and had lost a lot of weight. He would hide in his bedroom, skipping family dinners. Sometimes Lee would wake up in the middle of the night and find her husband sitting at the edge of her bed, mumbling to himself. He would stare at her in the dark without saying a word. Finally, Lee told him that he couldn't stay in the master bedroom anymore and moved him to the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor. But soon after that, Bill Sr. started acting even stranger. One night, everyone woke up to the sound of howling coming from the upstairs bedroom. When Deborah ran upstairs, she found Bill Sr. howling like a wolf, with his nose in the air. It looked like he was sleepwalking. When she shook him, he woke up and then fell asleep. The entity would later tell them that it had possessed Bill Sr. Desperate for help, Deborah found an exorcist named Steve Blake. He needed samples of everyone's hair and photographs to prepare for the exorcism. Steve wasn't going to perform an exorcism on Bill Sr. though. Instead, he planned to perform an exorcism on the house itself. Deborah and the family did not tell Bill Sr. about Steve. They wanted it to be a surprise because they knew that if they told Bill Sr., he would do everything to stop them. Bill Sr. was upset with how much money they were spending, and the worst part of all was that Steve's services were the most expensive. When Bill Sr. sat in a rocking chair in the family room, Steve and his friends began performing the ritual. The Moffat family hoped that they would get rid of the entity. The exorcist, Steve Blake, came to the Moffat house and started performing the ritual. As Steve began to chant, Bill Sr. froze. Then he suddenly tried to get up. Bill Jr. had to hold him down, but Bill Sr. let out a loud howl and slumped lifelessly back onto the chair. When his eyes opened, they were blank at first, but then his pupils rolled back into place. Steve finished the ritual and said that he had exorcised the presence in the room and that whatever was there was far bigger and more powerful. Unfortunately, even this led to a dead end. No matter how many people Deborah brought into that house, no one could help get rid of that entity. Now Deborah walked into the bathroom one day and asked the entity to tell them who was it who brought this entity into the family. And the entity would say that Bill Sr. wanted to kill his wife Lee. Now Deborah couldn't understand why Bill Sr. wanted his wife dead. She secretly spoke to Lee, and that's when she found out that Bill Sr. had been checking through her bank statements. Now Lee had inherited a lot of money, and if she died, then Bill Sr. would get all the money. This answered a lot of questions. Deborah tried to get Bill Sr. to see a psychiatric specialist. During one of the sessions, Bill Sr. mentioned the entity and everything it had done to his family. The doctor thought that he was having a psychotic episode because who would believe that there was an entity in the house? And so Bill Sr. was allowed to go home. But after he came home, Lee told that he was not welcome in the house because by now everyone knew what he wanted to do. Bill Sr. left but promised that he would be back. After 2 months without him, the Moffat family was happy. The negative presence in the house started to fade and things started to get calmer. As years passed, the entity's threats, the violent behavior, everything became less. It was as if Bill Sr. leaving made everything much better. Deborah wasn't sure what the entity wanted, but it was not troubling them like before. A few months later, Gary Kent would come to stay with them, and when he did, the entity troubled Gary so much that he left. Deborah asked the entity if it would follow Gary, and it replied saying that it would not work with an inferior being, meaning that it was more interested in Lee than anyone else. But it did not try to harm Lee. By October of 1992, the entity had been haunting the Moffat family for 6 years. Deborah had survived the worst of it and decided to try one last time to get rid of the entity. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror and said, "Dad's gone and he's not coming back. There's no one to keep you here, no one to feed you the hatred you crave. It's time for you to leave." The entity's reply appeared on the mirror in small letters. "Please let me stay here." Later, Gary packed his things and left. As Gary left for his taxi, the entity left one final message on the mirror. "Goodbye, my family." After that, all the paranormal activity stopped. It was as if the entity was gone. The family promised that they would stay in the house, but they would never talk about the entity again. Bill Sr. and Lee divorced in 1994, and that was the last time they ever heard from him. Deborah stayed in touch with Gary Kent, and he told that these symbols started appearing in his house, but not for long. So the entity actually went with him, but we are unsure of what happened later on because Gary would soon stop talking to Deborah. Lee passed away in 2009 and Bill Jr. passed away in 2012. Deborah was the last person to be alive. Eventually, she would tell her daughter Jessica all about the entity. 2 books were written about the experience: A Deadly Haunting by Joey Albrecht, and An Unwelcome Presence by Deborah Moffat. Despite most of the terror being over, Jessica still says that there is some feeling that she gets in the house, as if this entity is still there, watching them but not doing anything. Blumhouse has acquired the rights. I can't wait to watch what they make out of it because I'm sure it's going to be terrifying and exciting at the same time. But I would like to know from you, what do you think about this house and this family being haunted by a prince from hell? It took the family years to get out of the haunting. So many people came and went. So many people tried to get rid of this entity, but no one could. And finally, it is said that the entity left on his own. So what do you think about it? I would like to know from you. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? A big thank you to all my fellow listeners who have been listening and supporting this episode. Your reviews, your listens mean a lot. If you love this episode, if you love the stories that I put out, then please do leave a rating on whichever podcasting platform you're listening from. It would really mean the world to me. Other than this, I also have a YouTube and an Instagram page. I'll link it in the description. Do check it out. I have different stories on Instagram and I'm planning to put out some short horror stories on YouTube. So do subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned. I am also an author, love fiction stories. If you want to check out my free fiction book, I'll link it in the description. I'll also link my other account in the description where I talk about fiction writing, travel, and I also will soon start sharing fiction stories. So stay tuned. So do follow me there. Thank you so much for everything. That's all for this week. Stay kind, stay safe, and see you next week.